differently?
Yes. If I had to do over again, I'd spend more time in meditation and prayer, just telling the Lord how much I love Him and adore Him.
In this modern age in which we live, we've learned to harness the power of the atom, but very few of us have learned how to fully develop the power of prayer. We have not yet learned that a man is more powerful on his knees than behind the most powerful weapons we have ever developed.
But just look at how Jesus taught us to pray, and the Lord's Prayer is filled with requests for help from God. We'll talk more about the first part of prayer in a moment, but just look at the words. Verse 11, give us. Look at verse 12, forgive us. Verse 13, lead us, deliver us. Like the attitude of our hearts in prayer is clear here. We need God to do things for us. We need God to do things in our lives. Prayer is an expression of our need for God. Remember we talked about this a couple of months ago in football. What's the pass that a team throws when they're losing by a touchdown and they only have one play left? Hail Mary, right? Like, why do we bring in Mary at the end of a game? Well, again, it's an unbiblical prayer. But what's the reason for naming a play after a prayer? The whole idea is that you work according to your plan the whole game. When you don't have anything left, you need a miracle, you're desperate, you call Mary in and see what can happen. So, let's be clear, we do not pray to Mary. We do, though, pray to God. And the reason why is because we are desperate. But it's not just at the end of the game. It's in every facet of our lives. We don't just need Him like when we come to the end of this or that. Like we need Him from the start. Think about it. There's no activity in our lives that doesn't necessitate a prayerful attitude, a dependence on and desperation for God's help. I just personally, I cannot be the husband that God calls me to be to my wife. I cannot be the dad that my kids need, that I want to be to them. I can't be the man, the witness. I can't be the pastor that I want to be for you, that God calls me to be for you. I can't do any of those things apart from God's help. I can't breathe apart from God's help. So, when you think about it, so let's just turn that around for a minute. If we are not praying, then what are we saying? We're saying we don't need God. And this is where we realize that prayerlessness, at its root, is pride. I don't know how to put this any plainer. If you are not a praying person, you are a prideful person. You're full of pride. You are living a lie. You've convinced yourself that you can do this on your own, and you cannot. You cannot breathe on your own. There's nothing good you can do apart from the grace of God. Now, if that seems harsh, let me share just a bit of personal confession. As a pastor, there was a season in my life as a pastor. You ask me how long it was, I'm not sure exactly, but a season. It was long. Where the church that I was pastoring at that time was growing, like fast. And I'd written a book that a lot of people were reading. And yeah, on the outside, everything looked like it was going great. Reality is, behind the scenes, for a long season, my time in prayer, just alone with God in prayer, I would say was inconsistent at best. It was non-existent most days. Non-existent most days. Like that frightens me. It frightens me how successful I could be in the eyes of this church world and do it totally apart from intimacy with God. And I praise God for His grace in my life that kept that from going in all kinds of different directions that it could have gone in, that He didn't let it go in.
Here Jesus is praying in a certain place. When He finished, He's done praying, one of His disciples said to Him, "Lord, teach us how to pray." And most of us were never taught how to pray. Really? I mean, were we? I wasn't. And I'm willing to bet most of us were not ever really taught, well, this is really how you're supposed to pray. Most of us just close our eyes and start asking for stuff. Right? I mean, that's the extent of what prayer is to 90% of the Christian world. I close my eyes and start saying, okay, Lord, help me with this, help me with this. But to really sit down and to teach someone to pray, it's interesting, disciples say, we want to know how to pray. And so Jesus begins to teach them. The disciples said, I want to know how to pray the right way. And Jesus says, well, here's how you do it. First thing he teaches them is you say, Father. Now, most of us, we read that and go, okay, Father. But do you understand what a shock that was? When Jesus said, you say, Father. See, not that the thought of calling God Father was a foreign concept, because it was common. The Jews would refer to God as Father, but it was always in the sense of the Father of all things, the Father who created the world. Father in the sense of all things came from you. But when Jesus uses Father here, it's different. Jesus uses, in the Aramaic, he uses the word Abba. The word Abba is best translated in English as Daddy. And you got to understand, the religious leaders flipped whenever Jesus would call the Father Daddy. That was so foreign to them. That was so far beyond them. So you got to understand, when Jesus says, when you address God, you call him Dad. It was the term that the kids would use to call their dads. Abba, Abba. Daddy, Daddy. And Jesus says, when you pray, call him Dad. Jesus introduces something that was unheard of in that day. He was introducing intimacy with God. We take that for granted. We talk about a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. We talk about a personal relationship with God, but that was new.